Hello and welcome back, adventurers. This is Captain TTRPG, and today we're talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Are you searching for a creepy or frightening character build? Something bizarre, perhaps? Is a Halloween one-shot on the horizon? Well, luckily for you, today we are talking about a Dr. Victor Frankenstein build. It's unlikely you're going to play in a campaign that's focused on the themes and the dynamics of the Mary Shelley novel, but you can still have fun with the character and the general concept of a doctor that brings a creature to life with science, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to pull influence from different versions, not just from the novel. It'll be here and there. Who knows? We may even get a little young Frankenstein in there if we get really crazy about it. But either way, should be a fun build. I think it'd be a lot of fun to play. I think we've got a lot in here. So let's bring this build to life. Here we are, diving into our Dr. Victor Frankenstein build. Already got the name put in, and we've turned on your free archetype for the day. As always, I use free archetype because it's used so often, and we're going to build to level 10 like we do with all of our other builds. Jumping in here, we're going to keep human. I always recommend that people play around with this idea more, but the character is human, so we're going to stick with human. However, I think there's some interesting choices on the background. I think there are possible scholastic things you could go with here. I'd avoid magic, as he's much more into science and not really into magic. But I do like the clockwork researcher background, and that'll play more into our build later on. But I'm going to go with this. This is a technology-focused build, so very science-directed. And this will give us the chance to choose either dexterity or intelligence. And for our build, both are actually quite good. But we'll get to that in a few here. As far as what we're trained in, society, great. I would say that he had an understanding of society, even if he chose not to live within their boundaries. And engineering lore, which is what he's going to need in order to bring his creation to life. We're going to jump on in here. He is not a fighter, in my mind. Now, I do think there's a lot of interesting options here for how you could build him. Avoiding magic, again, because I really don't think that's a great fit. For a lot of people, you might think inventor right away, and I had as well, and I think there's some great ways to build that. But for me, I'm actually going to go with the investigator. Oftentimes, I think people see investigator and go, oh, this is your Sherlock Holmes, and you can build that. But there's a lot of things to investigate, and Dr. Frankenstein is about investigating the boundaries between life and death, and I think that is a fantastic fit. So we're going to go with intelligence-based investigator. Keep in mind, yes, again, intelligence is the focus here. It is a near martial, so we do have to think about the actual combat side, so it's playable in game, and we'll keep that in mind. So we've got our investigation going now. What methodology are we going to use? There's a couple different options to go with. Interrogation definitely doesn't feel right. Forensic medicine absolutely could feel good because you are bringing something to life. It is around life and death. Alchemical sciences could also play a role, but I'm actually going to go with empiricism here. And this is because he's all about trying to understand, trying to learn, and wanting to know more. And I think this fits it best. So I'm going to go with empiricism, although I really think there's a lot of good fits and options here. Fantastic. So we've got all of that chosen. Let's go ahead and dive into our ability scores. No surprise, we want a lot of intelligence, and I'm going to keep a secondary with dexterity. I think that's probably best. I don't look at him as a big brutish type, but we still need to be able to hold up in combat to some extent. So our offshoot scores here at the bottom, I'm going to go with wisdom and constitution. You might say, well, he wasn't the wisest with the choices he made, and that's fair, but neither was he charismatic, and I don't know that strength really fits. So I'm going to go with this set, dex and int, being our important choices. Okay, and we're going to dive into the skills here and try to go through this relatively quickly, but we've got a lot of options here. We can go with Arcana and think of it more as a way to imbue something with something that didn't have before, kind of leaning into that rather than on the magic side, but I know that may not fit for everybody. We'll pick a couple here that are just general good use. I like deception for him while he's not charismatic. He's not interested in letting everybody know what's going on with what he's doing in his off time. Medicine does make a lot of sense, I think, for him, and occultism absolutely can. He gets a lot of skills, remember, because we are intelligence-based. And then you got to sneak around a little bit, and you got some thieving to do, because you're not on the up and up. So that's how we're going to build, and then we've got our extra here. For the extra, we're going to go ahead and go with nature. And finally, on the empiricism side, this is where I'm sure you're all wondering, why aren't you using crafting? Well, that's because we get it with our empiricism. So we have crafting as well. We are trained in just so many skills. It shows just how much knowledge and capability we really have. With human, I generally just go versatile human. I think there are other options here. Obviously, choose what you like, but we're just going to go with that, and we're going to go ahead and grab the general feat. Incredible initiative, just to go first, right? We jump right in. We don't hold back. We don't wait and think as hard as we probably should. We just dive in. And while I think there's also good choices in here, lots of things that can help with a build, we're going to go with natural ambition. It lets us take another feat from level 1 from investigator. We already have that's odd. That's from our subclass choice. So I'm just going to go ahead and go with, I think there's good choices, but I'm going to go with known weaknesses. This allows us to recall knowledge as part of the devised stratagem action, which is pretty useful. And finally, on our own, I'm going to go with flexible studies. This is somebody who's very learned and I think could have had a lot of knowledge from different areas. So we're going to go with flexible studies. Okay, and level 1's great, sure, but we don't have our monster yet. Well, let's get down here and let's get to our monster. And in order to help with that, we need our crafting to be as high as possible, because we are going to bring something to life. And that brings us right to our free archetype, which is what I want to dive into next. There are multiple ways I think you can pull this off. But the reason that I built this in the first place, my whole inspiration was the Clockwork Reanimator dedication. I don't think there's anything that fits as well as this. And yes, it is rare. You will have to get sign off, but if you're building Dr. Frankenstein, you probably need GM sign off anyway. Here you're going to animate a corpse through cunning engineering, which is why we need crafting. It all fits the lore and probably what they had in mind when they built this anyway. So we grab that. Class feat. I don't know that any of these are particularly fitting to the character itself. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose something. I like shared stratagem. I think that's a fun way to play with the class and makes it so it's not just all on you. And on the skill feat, well, we're going down the crafting route. It only makes sense. Let's go all the way with the crafting route and take Inventor. While I wouldn't necessarily call the creature an invention per se, he certainly does have the mind to invent. So this gives us the option to have more formulas and make things as we go along in the adventure. Jumping down to level 3, keep in mind we get skill increases every single level because we are an investigator. There's, I think, a lot of good options here. I'm actually going to go, well, maybe I'll go with Society on this one. And let's go ahead and take another general feat. The general feats, fleet, toughness, things like that, I think are useful. You could go with thorough search. I think that's probably the most interesting for him. So I'm going to go ahead and take that. And on the skillful lesson here, I'm actually going to go with alchemical crafting. This is something that we kind of spoke about a little bit, that alchemy can play a role, but we didn't actually go that route directly. So we're going to go ahead and pick it up so we can do some alchemical crafting. He needs all possible sciences at his disposal. Move on down to level 4 here. Level 4, another skill increase. Still can't buff anything up to master yet, so medicine makes sense here. Again, one of the sciences that he's got background in. So we're going to get some medical science going on there. Let's jump into the, well, we'll go ahead and do the class feat first. We've got some good options at 4. We aren't so much the detective. We certainly aren't going to be taking anybody's lies. So I actually like strategic assessment. you're just learning more about your foes. You're so learned that it's much easier for you to recall knowledge about these creatures with which you're dealing. And I think this is a great way to put that across. So we're going to go with strategic assessment. And free archetype wise, let's look at our archetype class feats. We can make our creature stronger, or we can potentially hijack the undead. Now this doesn't necessarily fit the character, so I'm going to go with advanced reanimated companion. And now our companion is going to be much stronger. And when you're thinking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition and being able to play and keep up with everybody, it is going to be pretty important when you're relying on a companion so much that you do continue to increase it. And finally, since we improved our medicine anyway, let's go ahead and take battle medicine so we can potentially heal our allies or even our creature in combat. Ability boosts. This probably isn't going to blow anybody's mind. Dex, Int, Wisdom, and Constitution. Let's just keep going this direction. If you wanted to switch into some Strength, I think that's completely reasonable here, but I'm just going to keep going with that. Our skill increase, again, still can't go up to Master yet. And this time, we're bringing things back from the dead. Let's lead into the occult a little bit. I don't know that that's particularly fitting for him as a character, but I think it actually does fit for us, building him in the world that Pathfinder exists. So we look at our ancestry feats. We're human, we are very clever. That's kind of a whole hallmark of such an intelligent character in fiction. We're going to go with clever improviser, I think, and there are very few untrained skills, but what the heck, let's improve them. And on the skillful lessons, on the skill side of things, when we're looking at healing, we certainly aren't looking at using magic to heal. That's not really our thing. In fact, as people of science, rejecting any sort of deity as we try to play God ourselves, we're going to go with godless healing. And I think that's a great fit. And we don't have a patron, so perfect. Let's go ahead and hit with that. Do a little more healing with our battle medicine and our treat wounds. All right, looking down at level 6. We can almost move to Master, but not quite. But in order to bring our creation to life and look at the many versions of the character, using lightning itself to send life into the creature, we need to harness nature. And I think a good understanding of nature is critical here. So we're going to boost nature, and we've got a lot of skills at expert level now, which is one of the fun parts about being an investigator, honestly. Let's jump into our class feat again. In this one, connecting the dots is, again, more of the Sherlock Holmes route, and I don't know how much we're going to be doing purchasing. So let's go with thorough research. We are a researcher after all, really leaning into our recall knowledge. We're getting as much information as we can every time we recall knowledge because we just have so much knowledge. You are the identifier for your party. You are giving them everything they need to know to succeed every single combat. And I think that's a great way for you to lean as a character. All right, and what are our choices for our archetype feat? Well, nothing could be more fitting than it's alive. You've mastered the use of electrical energy to power your clockwork creations. This is how we brought it back to life. This is the perfect fit. Now when our creature takes electricity damage, it actually gains temporary hit points. And this is just a very cool fit, just thematically, and it's actually not bad in itself, especially if you're in a world where you've got allies that are dealing electricity damage, AoEs, and your contract can now be up in there. It's a great fit, just all the way around. All right, and we have one more skill feat to add. We're on this kind of healing path, and I do kind of like where we're going with that. So let's keep on that line and go with mortal healing. You had to have godless healing already, and we follow laws of our own morality, even if not the moralities other may have, but morality is relative. So we are going to go ahead and take this and get ourselves even more hit points going on. All right, level 7. As we look down at level 7, we can finally go to Master, which is exciting, which means we are going to go ahead and bump up our crafting. So we're hitting hard with our crafting now. As far as a general feat goes, we've taken, I think, some of the biggest ones. I kind of like Expeditious Search. But I don't think you'd be wrong to take toughness or fleet. So I'm going to go ahead and take expeditious search, but I think the others are very fitting and also more useful generally. For our level 7 skill feat, we've gotten the opportunity to pick up some interesting stuff, as we can now do grafting if we want. So graft technician is an interesting choice. But I'm actually going to go with, oh, where did he go? No, you know what? Let's go with graft technician. I kind of like that. Graft technician gives us the ability to gain formulas for graphs, and this allows us to kind of mess with our own creation a little bit, playing a little more God than we already were even. So that's actually kind of fun. I think the other one that you could really do here is Stitch Flesh, which it'll help you with undead creatures and treating their wounds. So it's probably a good idea for us. I kind of like both. You know what? In the end, I'm going to go with Stitch Flesh, but I'm going to hold on to the other as an option for us. So as we jump into level 8, let's go ahead and hit Nature. We really need to kind of make sure that we've pumped life into this creature. I think we've already done all of our stealing we're going to do. We're not going to learn any more about society. Let's just go down the nature route a little bit more. Okay, and on our class feat, Whodunit doesn't really fit us. Defensive stratagem certainly could. I like that one. I also really like Clue Them All In. So when they're trying to investigate on one of our investigations, then we can receive a circumstance bonus to clue in. And I think bringing everybody along, having them all keep up with our knowledge and what we're hunting down, what it is we're trying to understand, is fitting. You know, this is somebody who, at least in some incarnations, you know, is not only learned themselves, but also teaches, and I think that fits them well. As far as our archetype, just keep improving our companion. We want to keep up, and, you know, now especially that we Stitch Flesh, and now we're going to have Graft Technician, where we could even alter our creation. I keep going too far. Here's Graft Technician, so that's very fun as well, with all of our crafting and our nature choices and our medicine choices. I really think we're coming together with a solid way to play the character, which is important. Another area of knowledge, maybe let's bump up occultism or society. Maybe I'll bump up society again just for some greater knowledge. We're going to go ahead and take another ancestry feat. And this time for our ancestry, we've got some interesting options here. Group aid, potentially. Incredible improvisation. And I really think this might be our go-to. We already are improvising quite a bit, but getting our +4 in something that we aren't trained in can be really useful in the wrong situation arises, or we need to recall knowledge about something we don't have knowledge in. All right, we're almost done with our skill feats, though they are a lot of fun. Maybe we go back to something that is medicine-based. We go with unusual treatment. So I'll let you read through this. I'm not going to go through the entire thing, but this really helps us, again, lean further into the way that we use medicine. This time, actually able to reduce the values of some pretty powerful conditions. So I think that's really valuable, not only to help our allies, but to help our creation. Because the last thing we want is our creation to be bogged down or hampered in some way that we couldn't anticipate. All right. This time with our ability boost, we managed to get intelligence to go up by 1, which is exciting. I'm just going to keep bumping up these stats, which means we now have a new skill we can become trained in. There's only so many left. We're pretty far through here. I mean, it's really a hard call here. I would say more knowledge is better, so you could go with religion. Survival may not make the least sense, but I'm going to go ahead and go with religion just because you choose your own route of it. That doesn't mean that you don't understand it. And we've got a skill increase as well. And we look at other things to send up to master. Let's go ahead and just take occultism up. Again, knowledge is better for us. As we get to our level 10 class feats, there's not a whole lot here. I say with maybe ongoing strategy, this is related to our devised stratagem, but also just at a high level, this kind of makes sense for us as we're leading into our strategy itself and how we use our intelligence and our learnings as we deal with the different things we attempt to do in life. Let's get into our free archetype. Unfortunately here, we've come down to having only one choice. So normally I would say this doesn't fit the class and you could look for a different dedication. I think this is a great time to do that. But for us, I'm just going to go ahead and take Hijack Undead. I like to think that there's, some other point at which we may need to bring something else to life quickly and use our knowledge to use nature and electricity to our advantage to bring something to life. That's kind of how I treat this. But I think Hijack Undead it's certainly fun to play with at least. So even if it's not entirely fitting, we're just going to go with that. And the last one I want to really have in here, and I think this fits so well, now that we're high enough in occultism, is disturbing knowledge, because we certainly have quite a bit of that. I'll let you read into this, but being able to frighten and possibly even confuse targets with your disturbing knowledge is very, very fun. So there we go. Those are our level 1 to 10 build options there. Let's go ahead and bump ourselves up to level 10. When we look at our defenses here, I don't think there's really anything to do. You're not wearing armor. I mean, after all, you really just are probably in a lab coat or something like that. So let's, treat that as explorer's clothing. Sure, give ourselves that. Nothing too exciting here, but because we have a high dexterity, we're actually sitting okay anyway. You could throw some runes on here for your level. Just, I want to remind people about that. Don't forget your runes. When I'm setting something at level 10, I make sure to have the potency, resilience, and striking runes that make sense. So when we look on the offense side of things, I had to look around to find something that I thought made sense or was at least fun to pull in as a nod to something. And the choice I made in the end was to look at young Frankenstein. And at one point he's on stage, he's got a cane, and I thought, boy, this is a reach, but let's do this. I'm going to go with a sword cane here. Let's say that that was hiding in there because, I don't know, I couldn't come up with anything better than that. So we've got our sword cane. And we could do regular sword cane, or if we want to, we can go really fun here and go with the exquisite sword cane. Not only the sword cane itself, but we can add the exquisite sword cane sheath as well. Let's go ahead and do that. Again, remember, add on the appropriate runes. I'm not going to worry about them right now and set them up right here for both. But this was just one fun way to nod to one of the films. I don't know that it's fitting at all, but it was very fun. And finally, let's look at our pet really quickly. So we have our pet here. It's considered a construct. Let's go ahead and just nickname it the monster. Frankenstein's monster, however you like it. I'd say this is a large-sized creature. Something I think that's interesting to look at when you look at the creature's stats and our own, and we'll get rid of this spike in a second. When we look at the creature stats and our own, notice that it has actually more hit points and a higher AC than we do, which is fitting. This is a bulky, tough creature that we've brought to life, and that can be seen in some of the films that have been made. I think it's fitting from that perspective. We've got our fist, no surprise. I'm going to go ahead and change this because I just don't love this. And let's go ahead and give it the option to use its massive boot, which would be bludgeoning damage. I don't think Agile and Finesse makes sense here, but we'll leave them alone for now. That's some of the mechanics of the game with this type of companion, so that's fine. We've got our fist, we've got our boot. You can see really high strength here, oddly high dex, but that's, again, just part of what you get out of the construct. And there we go. That is our Dr. Victor Frankenstein build. Make sure that you really read a lot of these feats from the investigator and understand how they play in and what you can use them for. It's really valuable to recall knowledge. I think some people skip that a lot of the time. Yes, You can do some damage. That's probably not going to be the most important thing you do. Your construct can deal some decent damage. It may only have a plus 18 chance to hit, but it's still able to land some hits, do some damage, and take some hits as well. And I think you'd have a lot of fun, especially if you're into pet type builds. This is a great way to do it in a very different way. There we go. A creator and his creation working together to bring the pain. Yeah, sure. Doesn't really fit the novel very well, but it's a lot of fun. So I hope you guys have fun with this build. I hope that if you choose a different class or a different archetype, you'll throw it in the comments. I'd love to get your thoughts. All in all, I still think the build came together pretty well. I hope you try it out. I hope you have fun. And as always, adventure on.